So, it's the big day. Well, in fact, tomorrow's the big day, actually, because I think they lay down the regulations in Parliament today, don't they? But the actual policy kicks in tomorrow.
Yeah.
So the first 50 should be out by the end of the week. But Miriam, human rights lawyers will jump on it tomorrow, the way they jumped on the Rwanda deal at every opportunity. It could be that none go at all.
Well, absolutely. And the idea is that 50 a week could be deported, and these will be illegal immigrants with no connection to the UK.
Yeah.
But how easy will it be to claim that you do have some sort of connection to the UK? It could easily be, well, I speak English and I don't speak French.
I've got a second cousin here.
Exactly. And how would you disprove that? As you say, human rights lawyers will jump on this and find all sorts of ways to find family connections.
And, of course, who should know better than that, than the Prime Minister? He's a human rights lawyer.
Exactly. And even if it's successful, even if they deport 50 people a week, I think someone's calculated today in the paper that's only 7% of the people that are arriving. I mean, you take those odds. If you've got a 93% chance of not being deported, would you not just say, I'll try again?
Someone said it would take us 16 years at this rate to get rid of what we're expecting to arrive this year. It would take over 16 years to get rid of them. They've got to start somewhere, but it's desperate.
They're tying themselves in knots because they will not reintroduce Rwanda or something similar, which allows them to detain everybody and deport everybody. They won't do that, so they're trying all these other solutions that aren't going to work. 50
a week, when 25,000 have arrived already this year, is not a deterrent in any book. It's less than 4%.
Exactly. It's worse than youth. Well, anyway, these detentions, as we were saying, are expected to start within days as Sir Keir Starmer's one in, one out migrant deal with France comes into force today.
So the idea is to let Britain send people back to France if their claim is deemed inadmissible, i.e. they've got no connections here. Of course, they could lie about that, in exchange for asylum seekers with ties to Britain.
But just 50 returns a week are expected, despite record crossings. And the agreement with France is set to expire in just 11 months.
So how ridiculous is that?
How this is going to work, we've got GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster in the studio. Now, Catherine, we've been quite dismissive of this proposal, as have many others. But what is the Labour government's argument for this? How do they think this is going to help the situation?
Well, they've admitted that it's not a silver bullet, but it is one of many things that they say they are doing. We had the announcement of a deal with Germany to do with the storage and supply of boats a couple of weeks ago. They've done they have another agreement with France, which is going to allow police to wade into shallow waters. We occasionally see.
Catherine? We keep hearing
I think
about
it may be by the thing is, you hear these announcements, and then you hear the announcement again, and you would naturally assume that these things are happening. But I think that might be the German law change that's by the end of the year.
Yeah.
So nothing is moving quickly.
Because the French police unions are objecting to this idea because they say it will expose the French gendarmerie to potential danger from the migrants.
Well, indeed, and we have seen increasing violence, and lawlessness in the camps. Now, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, has described it as a groundbreaking principle. I think the word principle there is significant because, of course, what we need is practical solutions. This 50 a week that we're hearing, the government will not put a number on it at all. It is a pilot scheme. It's only for 11 months. The government have said that they want to ramp up the pace significantly. We expect that the first people to be detained, that will happen this week. The Home Secretary has said that in terms of people physically being sent back to France, they want to see that beginning by the end of the month. But, of course, we've got 800 people arriving a week on average. The numbers are up 50% on last year. I mean, their own government officials are warning that unless you can send back more people, significantly more people than are coming in, migrants can do basic maths and work out the odds of being able to stay. So is it going to be a sufficient deterrent? The government think that it will make a difference. But will it? Because, as we've seen, if you make it over here, the chances are you will get to stay. You'll be put up in a hotel. You get your board. You may well be able to work illegally. You're not supposed to, but we see it over and over again.
Yeah.
We saw these migrant hotels. We saw migrants, on their phones. I mean, don't know where the phones come from, look like iPhones, some of them, laughing, taking pictures of the protesters. It must be infuriating to British people who, many of us, still struggling with the cost of living, seeing people that have broken into the country rewarded effectively.
Yeah, and at a cost of billions of pounds a year, Catherine, in terms of the hotel costs and benefits and all the rest of it. That's without the damage to social cohesion.
Huge costs. And I mean, the use of asylum hotels is actually falling, but we've seen it going on for so long. So although it's falling, the anger is building. And then, of course, they've got people being put into houses of multiple occupation. I was at a press conference yesterday with Reform where Nigel Farage was asked about, you know, what do you do when it's not safe to send people back to a particular country? And he just went, I'm done. We've had enough. If you come here illegally, we will detain you and then we will deport you. Now, he told me that how Reform plan to do this, we will get the details later in the summer. But of course, international law says that if somebody comes and claims asylum, you cannot just, it's not as easy as that. But I think what's very interesting is what's happening in Greece now. The Greek government, they've had like 2,000 migrants arriving on Crete, you know, in just a couple of days. They've turned around and they've said, we're not processing any asylum claims now for the next 3 months. If you arrive, we will keep you in detention and then we are going to send you back. So that will be interesting to see what happens there.
And Greece is signatory to all these international treaties and is part of the EU.
Well, precisely. So, but you know, the government is very keen to say they are returning more people than ever. The returns are up 28%. I think worth bearing in mind, most of those are people who have come legally and overstayed their visas.
Right.
And most people do come in that way. And I also think it's interesting, there's a YouGov poll today that apparently 47% of Brits think that most migration is illegal. In other words, the people crossing the channel on small boats. That's actually only 4% of net migration, because most people coming are through legal routes, entirely allowed and indeed encouraged by this government and successive governments.
And a lot of people who claim asylum are people who've come over initially on legal visas and then overstayed and decided to claim asylum. So it's a very, very complex system. But politically, I can see a day where Number 10 decides, in terms of the political aspect of this in the next election, we are going to have to do something about international law and international treaties. I could see that happening, but it'll never get through Labour backbenchers, will it?
Well, the government has wanted to do various things, winter fuel allowance, the welfare reforms that it has not been able to get through. I can't see any way in which a lot of Labour MPs would tolerate that. But at the same time, the government do realise that this issue makes people absolutely furious. And I think they do understand that this is key if they're going to have any hope at all of winning the next election, just as the Tories were punished for it. They've got to get these numbers down significantly. But at the moment, it's not
and just finally on that, I'm sure they'd be very furious to know that the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, she did the BBC, she did ITV, she did everybody, but she refused point blank, yet again, to come on to GB News, where she would have been treated with great respect and dignity.
Well, let's bring in immigration lawyer Ivan Sampson. Ivan, thank you very much for joining us this morning. What's your view of this new one-in, one-out scheme? Do you think it will have the effect that the government is hoping for?
No, I mean, it's pretty obvious it won't, because, I mean, the numbers will stay the same. So for every one person that's removed, one's going to arrive. So the numbers equal themselves out. But what I think it does do, it's a start. It strengthens UK and an EU member states' cooperation in an international treaty. And I think what needs to be done is to widen that agreement, the one out, one in asylum policy, to perhaps even an EU-wide agreement. At the moment, we have an agreement with France, but really we need an agreement with the EU. If the French, we have to rely on the French, that's another problem. So, and French have historically resisted large-scale returns to the UK without reciprocal benefits. So there's going to be some horse trading to be done between the UK and France if we're going to extend this agreement. But I think Andrew pointed quite rightly that the administrative steps to remove people are quite complex. And at each stage, they may be subject to legal challenges. So you may find that those that are being identified, and by the way, it's only those people coming across the boats that will be removed, not the people already here. So it's everyone from tomorrow will be subject to this new policy. And if I'm here already, I wonder how many people will just disappear into the distance, because if they know there's a threat of removal, they may well not turn up and become part of the black economy. So there's a problem there. Now, the deterrent's limited for now, but we may see an extension of it. And it'll only work if people are removed to their home country. Even France won't work, because if we remove everyone to France, what does the French do with these people? It doesn't solve the problem. They have to be removed back to their home country. That is the only thing that's going to work.
Well, Ivan, perhaps we should go down the Greek route, which Catherine was referring to, where the Greeks have just said to these migrants who've arrived in one of the Greek islands, fine, they're just going to effectively put them in a camp. They're not going to process their applications at all, and then they're going to deport them.
Well, the UK may have to make some hard decisions, but however, while we're members of the Refugee Convention and while we're a signatory to the European Convention on Human Rights, I'm afraid the UK will not do that. And
Greece are signatories to those conventions.
Yes, as I said, the UK will have to make some hard decisions, and ones which don't sit well with the moral compass that we have and our international obligations. If the governments are willing to do that, and I think you're right, Andrew, this is going to be the key issue come the next election. And I think membership of the European Convention is going to be a key issue. And those parties that are willing to come out of it may seem quite attractive to the voters.
Well, we shall see. Ivan Sampson, thank you so much for your time this morning. Well,